Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is Dash Rendar, or as Administrative Results called me,
he's like Aragorn we have at home.
The purpose of this video today is going to be breaking down the new Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power Season 2 trailer. Now, I tend to try to be positive about all things in life. I don't like to be negative. I don't like to disparage things. And my motto a lot of times is, you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. But I'm going to talk about some of the issues I had with the first season, how I hope it can turn around if at all possible, because if I'm anything, I'm optimistic. I'm well aware that talking about this or even mentioning it is basically wandering into a minefield. You're basically consciously saying, I'm making a stand one way or another, and I want people to base an opinion off what I'm saying. But I just kind of want to make it something where I feel like I hope they can do better. You know, at the end of the day, I'm going to be positive about it, because until I see the finished product, I can't really say anything. Now, what were some of the big issues for me in season 1? Well, firstly, your main character or protagonist has to be likable. And I feel like they really didn't do a good job with Galadriel. Read the appendices by Tolkien. There's a little excerpt in there with the story of Arwen and Aragorn, their love story. It's a great one if you haven't read it already, where basically he is doing his traveling for 30 years or plus as he's out in the wilderness, and he runs into Galadriel, and it states that like she didn't have the same joyful, exuberant face. You know, she smiled less, she looked more world weary, which means at some point she was a little more boisterous, a little more fun, less serious all the time. And so I feel like they made her really serious for the role, and it kind of takes you out of it, because it's hard to vote for someone, or root for someone rather, who just has that face all the time. Even Aragorn, while he was very serious, he had a little bit of a whimsical nature to him in the Lord of the Rings movies, and it just makes it so it's hard to root for someone like that. And there was just also a small amount of inconsistency. There's that one scene where she's basically interrogating the main bad guy of the season, and basically it's like, I'm gonna wipe out your entire race. And then she goes real dark there for a minute, and then after that, what happens is she gets stranded with that one kid, and she's like, a warrior knows when to not use his sword. And it's like, that does not seem like it lines up really well with what you were just saying to that guy. The other thing was the speeches, the motivational speeches. I don't know how many times someone stood up on a high platform just to make a decree or an announcement, and it just felt so out of place. Like the writing was just not there to make it organic, so they kind of had to interject this really hoorah moment, and it just didn't fit well. Of course, one of my biggest gripes was the Numenoreans and how they basically did them dirty. The precursors to the Dunedain Rangers, the mightiest of men, and they just kind of made them like chumps. So I didn't really enjoy that at all. I felt like it really sacrificed their position in order to elevate Galadriel's position. I understand why they did it from a narrative perspective to make her something truly special, but I feel like there's other ways they could have done that without tearing another character down to build another one up. So as the trailer begins, we kind of see this suspicious like ooze or evil creeping over the land. The first thing I did notice is I did like the score of the trailer. I felt like they did a good job captivating it. I feel like the musical score was really good. And then we get to see Galadriel and Elrond have a sword. So I was really excited about that. In the previous season, he was really relegated to diplomat. You don't get to see the warrior that basically helped bring down Sauron the first time around. So him having his sword and looking confident and smooth and poised, I think it's a big step to kind of help flesh his character out more, give him a little bit more of a say, a little bit more power, a little more strength. That alone, just that little action of him having a weapon and looking smooth and confident, really helps to bring his character to light a little bit better than the first season did, because he was that warrior. He was an amazing fighter, and I don't think they gave him that in the first season. Next up, we get to see Sauron in more of his evil look with his long hair and the white hair. More of the deceiver, I feel. I think that in the first season, one of the weaker aspects of it was who is Sauron? Is it the person who's obviously not him, who's Gandalf, or is it this one guy who just came out of nowhere? So I really feel like that being out of the way and just having him as the villain is going to be a much better starting point, because again, I felt like that was the weakest story thread. I feel like a lot of people figured it out right away, and they were just like, well, we made this decision, so we got to run with it now. And so having that done, I think, and having him in his menacing power is going to be good. But again, he's not a deceiver in the same way. It shows the power that he has with like that little hand flick where he blows everything up, but not so much the deception part, I feel. So I think that was the big thing, like Morgoth / Melkor was the one who was the heavy hitter. And I know they can't pull from the Silmarillion because that's owned by the Tolkien estate, and they're not willing to give that up at this time. So they are limited and hampered in what they can do, but I feel like they haven't really gone that deception route well. We have the orcs, and the thing I really liked, I think, about the first season they did, what was the practical effects. I really feel like they went with that. Again, there was so much that didn't go right with it, but I felt like they looked pretty good. They didn't have the Hobbit look where it was all CGI. It was more analogous to the original Lord of the Rings, and this one especially looks very menacing, looks very real, practical effects. So I really like that they went that route, because I think that was one of the things that made the first movie so great. There's so many things, but I think the Uruk-hai and the orcs themselves were just amazing. And Lurtz, even though he was, created for the movie, was a great main villain, and he was really just a menacing presence. And so they really need like a sub-tier boss, like a Lurtz, I think, in this one that would just really sell it. So there's someone for them to fight, because they're obviously not going to beat Sauron, but they need someone else that they can kind of rally together to defeat. And I think a really good looking practical effect orc would be a great way to move with that. Next, we get into some elf shenanigans, archery stuff, where they're doing that extremely unique style draw, almost like the Na'vi in Avatar. And so first of all, I'm not one to judge a book based on how well they do archery. I don't care, as long as it looks cool and is compelling. But this is my lightest bow here. This is 130 at 32, 110 at 28. And so the problem I have with that is just, as a draw style, you're actually not really using your back very well, because you can kind of get it a little bit, but like it's not using the back muscles very well, because when it's heavy archery, it's really going to draw down to the back muscles. And when you have it here this way and you're pulling, you can do it, but it's hard to get like that full draw. And so again, it's just a way to look special, almost like a reverse grip. And you think of The Witcher, it's more about the theatrical flair than anything. So they're married to that, and I'll just accept it for what it is. But I feel like it would have been a lot cooler if they had like a thumb ring and did a thumb draw, because I think that's a little more exotic as opposed to the standard Mediterranean 3-finger. So, they did it, but I think a thumb ring would have been cooler, because they could have had like an Elven inscripted thumb ring, and that would be more in line, I think, with the rapid style shooting. So missed opportunity, but whatever. Just kind of a frame of reference as far as the length of what a draw looks like when you're working with a longbow or warbow. That's gonna be a full draw, and then using that particular way, like the inverted way, okay, yeah, it also tends to like bounce off a little. I've never done it, so obviously I'm not trained with that particular style, but it just feels really counterintuitive and hard to keep on the string. A little brief look at Celebrimbor, and I mean, he was another one that got kind of dirty in the first season. I feel like his understanding of metallurgy was limited as far as like infusing metals together. It was mind-blowing. I think it'd be a lot cooler if the secret that Sauron gave them, because in the book it kind of said he gave them the secret, would have been some magical infusion or something he wasn't aware of. But if it was just like, oh, we're just putting these metals together, and it's like, wow, mind blown. How did you know? So here's the real question. Will I watch it? Well, I feel like I did suffer through the first season. I made it to the very end, even though it was a bit of a grind. I don't feel like quitting just yet, because I think that they could turn it around. Who knows? It's a rich universe. There's a lot of great lore that they could pull from if they just do a little bit more to kind of stick to what was done by Tolkien and make it more in line with that thematically. And I don't know, I think maybe, but not sure. Funniest thing, I think, had to be that HBO dropped House of the Dragon season 2 trailer like 30 minutes after the Lord of the Rings trailer. And if that's not like an affront and an attack, I don't know what is. I thought that was pretty humorous. I know someone over there at HBO just had like their finger on the button, and it's like, let's wait till it gets going a little bit. Boom, we publish ours next. So I wonder if there was like a fight back and forth to see who would publish theirs first and who would get the benefit of basically shading the other people dramatically. Now also, realistically, this is probably the closest I'm ever going to get to a react video, because I think just sitting there and reacting to a video is a little bit boring. I know lots of people do it and they do well, but this is probably the extent of what I can do. If you were ever curious about the Numenoreans and their history, I have that video over here. I spent a lot of time on that one and research, and that's a great fun-filled lore with those basically proto-humans, and then also did one on the Dunedain Rangers and their order, the Rangers of Honor and the Rangers of Gondor. And so if you like Lord of the Rings and you want to check that out, feel free to. If not, let's just collectively hold our breath for season 2 in Rings of Power and see if they pull it off.